Every morning, I'd wake up to the thunderous sound of tires screeching across my driveway as Karen's bright blue SUV zoomed through like it was her personal expressway. You'd think living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood would mean respecting each other's property, but apparently, that rule didn't apply to our HOA president. Karen had discovered that cutting through my driveway saved her exactly 43 seconds on her commute. Yes, she actually timed it and bragged about it at the last HOA meeting. What started as an occasional shortcut quickly became her daily routine, followed by several other neighbors who figured if the HOA president could do it, so could they. My once quiet mornings turned into a parade of vehicles treating my property like a public thoroughfare. Despite my polite requests and increasingly frustrated complaints, Karen would wave dismissively and cite some imaginary HOA regulation that supposedly gave her the right to use any driveway for efficient neighborhood navigation. She even had the audacity to suggest I should be grateful for the extra foot traffic, claiming it added community spirit to the area. Little did she know, her shortcut days were numbered, and I was about to give her a navigational challenge she'd never forget. The situation with my driveway had been escalating for months, but everything really started when Karen moved into the corner house at the intersection of Maple and Oak Street. Our neighborhood was laid out in a slightly unusual way. My house sat perfectly positioned between two main roads, with a long, curved driveway that happened to create an almost straight shot from Maple to Oak. For anyone willing to cut through private property, it was the ideal shortcut that could save precious minutes during morning rush hour. Karen, with her self-important attitude and her brand new Honda Civic that she treated like a luxury vehicle, quickly discovered this geographical advantage. At first, it was just once or twice a week. I'd hear the crunch of gravel and see a flash of silver through my kitchen window. Initially, I thought it might be deliveries or someone making a mistake, so I didn't give it much thought. But Karen wasn't content with occasional trespassing, she had bigger plans. Within a month, her Tuesday and Thursday shortcuts became daily occurrences. She'd barrel down my driveway at precisely 8:15 a.m., usually while I was still in my pajamas trying to enjoy my morning coffee. The sound was impossible to ignore. Her car's exhaust pipe had developed a particular rattle that announced her arrival like a foghorn. But Karen wasn't flying solo for long. Word spread through the neighborhood grapevine, and soon other residents caught on to this secret route. First came Bob from 3 houses down, then the Miller family from across the street, and eventually even teenagers from the local high school started using my driveway as their personal highway. My once peaceful mornings transformed into a rush-hour traffic jam right outside my kitchen window. The tipping point came when Karen was elected HOA president. You would think this position would make her more respectful of rules and property boundaries, but it had the opposite effect. She became convinced that her new title granted her special privileges throughout the neighborhood. During one particularly heated confrontation, she actually pulled out a laminated copy of the HOA bylaws, which she had apparently amended herself, pointing to a clause about reasonable access for community well-being. This clause, she argued, gave her the right to use any driveway that facilitated efficient neighborhood transportation. Never mind that she had essentially written this rule herself during a late-night HOA meeting that only 3 people attended. When I challenged her interpretation, Karen looked at me with the condescending smile she reserved for what she called difficult residents and suggested that I was being selfish for not considering the greater good of the neighborhood. My attempts at resolution started simple. I put up a polite sign, "Please respect private property, no through traffic." Karen drove around it. I installed those orange traffic cones you see at construction sites. She moved them to the side every morning and put them back afterward. I even tried having a neighborly conversation, bringing over homemade cookies and explaining how the constant traffic was disrupting my daily routine and damaging my property. Karen listened with fake sincerity, nodded along, and then continued using my driveway the very next day. She even had the nerve to leave a thank you note for the cookies attached to one of my traffic cones. The situation reached a boiling point when Karen started organizing what she called HOA efficiency tours, where she would lead other board members through various neighborhood shortcuts, including mine. She treated my property like a public demonstration site, pointing out how my driveway was criminally underutilized and suggesting that all homeowners should consider opening their driveways to neighbors in need. The final straw came when she proposed at an HOA meeting that we should all share driveways on a rotating basis to build community spirit. The meeting minutes, which I obtained later, showed that she had already planned out a schedule that had my driveway being used by different families every day of the week. I spent weeks researching legal options, property rights, and HOA regulations. I learned that while HOAs have certain authorities, they cannot override private property rights or force homeowners to allow trespassing. But Karen had been careful to phrase everything as suggestions and community guidelines rather than official mandates. She was technically breaking no written rules, just massively abusing the spirit of neighborly cooperation. Traditional deterrents weren't working, she had simply adapted to whatever obstacle I put in her way. I needed something more creative, something that would give her exactly what she wanted while teaching her a lesson about respecting boundaries. That's when inspiration struck during a weekend trip to a botanical garden, where my kids got lost in a magnificent hedge maze. As we wandered through the twisting paths, laughing at our confusion and celebrating each dead end as an adventure, I realized I had found my solution. Karen wanted access to my driveway? I would give her access, but access to a journey she hadn't bargained for. The idea was perfect. I wouldn't be blocking her entirely, which might give her ammunition for HOA complaints, but I would make her shortcut significantly longer than the original route. And the best part? I could present it as a neighborhood beautification project, something that would actually improve property values while solving my problem. Over the next several days, I sketched designs, measured distances, and planned my revenge down to the last detail. Karen had no idea that her 43-second shortcut was about to become a 10-minute puzzle. The transformation began on a Saturday morning when I called my cousin Mike, a landscape architect who owed me a favor from when I helped him move. Together, we designed the most elaborate hedge maze my suburban driveway had ever seen. The plan was ingenious. We would plant fast-growing evergreen shrubs in a maze pattern that would funnel anyone entering from Maple Street through a complex series of twists and turns before depositing them back onto Maple Street, right where they started. The entire maze would be disguised behind a welcoming entrance that looked exactly like my old driveway opening, complete with fresh gravel and decorative stones. I spared no expense ordering premium arborvitae shrubs that would grow tall quickly and dense privet hedges that would fill in the gaps. The whole project took 3 intense weekends of digging, planting, and careful positioning. Monday morning arrived, and I positioned myself at my kitchen window with coffee in hand, waiting for the show. Like clockwork, Karen's silver Civic appeared at 8:15 a.m. She didn't even slow down as she turned into what appeared to be my driveway, completely missing the subtle signs that something had changed. The entrance looked identical. I had carefully maintained the original appearance while the actual path led into a completely different direction. Within seconds, I heard her brakes squeal as she realized the familiar straight shot had been replaced with a sharp left turn. Through strategic gaps in the hedge, I could track her progress as she cautiously navigated the first bend, then the second. Her car crawled along as she tried to make sense of the winding path, honking impatiently when she reached the first dead end. The beauty of my design was that every wrong turn led to 2 more choices, creating an exponential increase in confusion. Karen spent the next 20 minutes trapped in my green labyrinth, her frustration growing with each failed attempt to find the exit. Other neighbors started to notice. I could see people walking their dogs and pausing to watch Karen's car disappear and reappear at various points in the maze. Some pulled out their phones to record the spectacle. The piece de resistance came when Karen finally reached what appeared to be the exit, only to find herself back on Maple Street, right where she started. The expression on her face was priceless, a mixture of rage, confusion, and disbelief. She sat in her car for a full minute, staring at the unchanged street sign as her GPS recalculated, before finally driving the long way to work. But the story didn't end there. Bob from 3 houses down, who had been following Karen's lead for months, arrived 15 minutes later and fell for the exact same trap. Unlike Karen, Bob found the whole thing hilarious. He spent nearly 30 minutes in the maze, laughing and taking selfies at various dead ends, turning my revenge into a neighborhood adventure. By Wednesday, word had spread throughout the community about the driveway maze, and it had become the talk of the neighborhood Facebook group. Some teenagers started treating it as a challenge, trying to beat their friends' completion times. I even caught the Millers having a family maze running competition on Saturday afternoon. Karen's response was predictably dramatic. She called an emergency HOA meeting, during which she attempted to cite various ordinances about malicious landscaping and neighborhood disruption. However, her prepared speech fell flat when several board members admitted they had personally visited the maze and found it charming. One board member even suggested we consider installing more decorative features throughout the neighborhood. Karen's attempts to paint me as the villain backfired spectacularly when I presented my landscaping permits and design plans, showing that everything had been done legally and with proper approvals. The fact that I had used only native plants and drought-resistant species actually aligned perfectly with the HOA's recent Green Initiative guidelines. The coup de grace came when local news picked up the story after someone posted a viral TikTok video titled "HOA President Trapped in Suburban Hedge Maze." The segment painted it as a heartwarming example of creative problem-solving and community beautification. The reporter interviewed several neighbors who praised the maze as an unexpected gathering place that had brought people together. Even the local garden club president appeared on camera, commending my use of sustainable landscaping practices. Karen, who had initially agreed to be interviewed thinking she could control the narrative, ended up looking petty and self-centered when she complained about losing 43 seconds of commute time. The ultimate irony was that my revenge accidentally improved the neighborhood in ways I hadn't anticipated. Property values in our area actually increased because the maze became a unique selling point that realtors mentioned during home tours. Children in the neighborhood had a safe, fun play area right in the middle of our street. The maze even won an award from the county's beautification committee. Karen, finding herself increasingly isolated as neighbors sided with the popular maze, eventually resigned from her HOA position. Her replacement, a retired botanist named Mrs. Chen, not only loved the maze but worked with me to expand it into a community garden project. 6 months later, Karen moved to a different neighborhood, one with nice, straight streets and no creative landscaping. I heard through the grapevine that she now has a 90-minute commute, compared to her old 35 minutes. The hedge maze remains, now officially designated as a neighborhood landmark and protected from HOA removal by a community vote. On weekends, families picnic nearby while their children navigate the green labyrinth. I've added benches, bird feeders, and even a small plaque that reads, "Respect creates beautiful neighbors." Every morning, as I drink my coffee in peaceful silence, I watch people of all ages enjoying the maze, learning patience, and most importantly, taking the long way around my actual driveway. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's creating something beautiful that outlasts the pettiness that inspired it.